Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the regular meeting of the DeKalb City Council, October 22, 2018. Prior to the start of the meeting tonight and our roll call, I would like to remind everyone in the audience who may like to speak to any item on tonight's agenda, or for that matter, any item that you'd like to speak on to the City Council tonight, to kindly fill out a speaker request form. We only have one filled out so far. Do you find those in the back of the room? Make sure they get up here to our city clerk, Lynn Fazekas, who will get them to me and will get you on at the appropriate time. Having said that, I would like Lynn Fazekas to call the roll, please.
Jacobson. Finucane.
Here.
Marquardt.
Here.
Fagan.
Here.
Noreko. Here. Verbeek.
Here.
Favor.
Here.
Smith.
Here.
7 present.
Thank you. I'd like to ask our police officer who is on duty tonight, Jordan Poulos, to come forward and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Jordan. Okay, our next item on the agenda, item C, approval of tonight's agenda. First of all, I would ask, are there any additions or deletions to tonight's agenda? If not, I'd entertain a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Alderman Finucane, seconded by Alderman Marquardt. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Finucane.
Yes.
Marquardt.
Yes.
Fagan.
Yes.
Noreko. Yes. Verbeek.
Yes.
Favor.
Yes.
Jacobson.
Yes.
Smith.
Yes.
8 aye.
Thank you. So moved. Item D, public hearings. There are no public hearings tonight. And item E, special items or presentations and citizens' comments. We do have a number of those this evening. And I would like to first call upon Jason Michnick from our Community Development Department. Jason is one of our planners here. He is going to introduce a program of which I know he is very, very proud. He's got a special guest, a very special guest, appropriately attired tonight. Jason, I'm going to let you talk about TDS, Tanzania Development Support.
Thank you, Mayor. As a graduate student in the MPA program, I had the wonderful opportunity to travel to Tanzania for about 5 weeks to learn about the role of NGOs and nonprofits in the world of development, especially in developing countries. The program started off in 2008 and has provided opportunity for, I think, 50 or so NIU students to travel across the world to Tanzania. And it was just a tremendous experience for me, enough so that I loved the experience that I went back a couple of months later for a semester in Kenya, and then I went back last year as well, so I'm planning to go back again next year. So I'd like to introduce Professor Kurt Thurmaier, who's the chair from the Public Administration Department and also the president of TDS, to share with everyone here in the community just what TDS has been up to. We're celebrating our 10-year anniversary. We actually have a dinner coming up this Saturday that's free for anybody in the community to come join us and learn more about the organization. And with that, Professor Thurmaier.
Thank you very much, Jason, and Thank you, Councilor. Thank you, Mayor, for this opportunity to talk about Tanzania Development Support. You know, this story really is a story about collaboration within DeKalb. Because it's a story about Tanzania Development Support, which is a nonprofit that my wife and I co-founded in 2008. But we also have at least 3 churches, First Congregational, First Lutheran, and Bethlehem Lutheran, that are supporting projects in Tanzania, plus our partnership with NIU. And we've teamed up, TDS and NIU, and I've brought 6 groups of students on study abroad since 2009. The students, as Jason said, learn about the role of NGOs in developing countries, but the students also have a lot of service projects that they perform while they're there. And this partnership really reaches in many aspects of NIU. So on the right is Manny Hernandez, Professor Emeritus of Pottery, and he goes around the world and helps create water filter factories. And these are water filters that are low cost and very effective. And we also have the Engineers Without Borders. Professor Andrew Ortieno led several groups of those students to put solar panels on school buildings. And James Cohen, who's on the left, is working on literacy training for teachers. So it's a pretty broad-based partnership. Where's Tanzania? It's in the east part of Africa. It's the lowest highlighted country there. It's about 50 million of the poorest people on the planet. What we are doing is working in that upper right, that red zone is called the Mara region. So that's the part of Tanzania where we work. A lot of people think Tanzania is only about the Serengeti, which is an amazing place. I've been there like 14 times now, and it's truly spectacular. But we actually are there for the people, and especially for children and helping children in their education. So starting in 2009 and then again in 2011, NIU students and TDS helped build a dormitory for 160 girls. It's the first flush toilets and the first showers that were in the school of about 600 high schoolers. Then in 2012 through 2016, we worked on creating a community library and resource center and a teacher resource center, and then 2 computer labs. And now we're shifting our focus really from bricks to books. And so what we're trying to do is build a culture of reading. And we did a baseline study of the area villages, and we found that there were virtually no houses that had even one single book in the house. And many times that was either the Bible or a Quran. So bringing books into the reality of everyday learning is a huge task for us, but it's also a great opportunity. And so what you see are children who are actually going into the library and reading, and as well as taking breaks to read assignments outside on the lawn. We also, in my students in 2015 and 2016, helped teachers learn how to access the internet for materials to enhance their classrooms. And then in 2015, I also had some students from the College of Business who helped with a group of about 6 very poor women who were potters create this Safe Water Mugango. It's a social enterprise where they are creating water filters that take no extra energy. So when households use these low-cost energy water filters, they reduce deforestation. They also reduce the time that girls are spent gathering firewood, which means they can spend more time in their studies. 85% of the illnesses that are in this part of the world are waterborne illnesses, and sick kids can't go to school. So this is both a way to keep more kids in school, but also the women, the profits that they make out of this business is actually used to send their kids and pay school fees. We also partnered with NIU Ed Systems, which works on career pathways in Econ, Illinois, which a lot of people are familiar with. So we've created several kinds of programs within the Tanzanian 4-H framework. So we're teaching entrepreneurship skills, we're teaching leadership skills and lifelong learning skills. We're hoping to create reading circles within the students with the books that we're buying, as well as hopefully even creating writing circles and writing competition so that secondary kids could actually create books for primary school kids. So this partnership with TDS and NIU have really opened up a lot of opportunities for our students here in Northern Illinois to learn about one of the poorest countries in the world. And it's truly an engagement that brings benefits both ways. So we would like to invite all of you to our Saturday dinner. As Jason said, it's our 10th anniversary. We're very proud of what we've done. We'll showcase some more of our projects. Some of our students from 2018 are going to be there and talk about what they just experienced as well. And finally, for those who have a little adventure, I invite you to climb, and anybody in the community who wants to climb Mount Kilimanjaro, if that's on your bucket list. I will be leading my third and last climb to the top of Kilimanjaro in June of 2019. Our goal is to raise $75,000, which will buy about 15,000 books. It's a lot of fun, just a little low on oxygen. Thank you very much.
Well, on behalf of the city of DeKalb, and what's really engaged me so much in this is the fact that TDS is an organization of folks who, here we are in DeKalb, Illinois. You've got a lot of local supporters. I know you have this event, you have a garage sale and all that every year. We've engaged students and townspeople alike, and I commend Jason, you, for being part of the program, inviting Professor Thurmeyer over tonight, and Kurt, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah. Proudly DeKalb. Proudly DeKalb for sure. Our next item on the agenda, Annie Glidden North Revitalization Plan Task Force update. Again, for the benefit of those of you who may not be aware, this is a project that we actually started a year ago, August, with a 30-member task force. They completed their plan. That plan now is in pretty much draft form. It was presented to the Planning and Zoning Commission this week. Bill Finucane, our second ward alderman, along with Dave Jacobson, our first ward alderman, have been our council liaisons to that planning task force, and they've deferred their speaking tonight to Joellen Charlton, who is our Director of Community Development here for the city, who will lead the charge now as we work towards implementation of some of the plans. Joellen?
Thank you, Mayor. Just real quickly, as you mentioned, Mayor, the Planning and Zoning Commission did hold their public hearing and their public meeting last week here in City Hall Council Chambers, and did hear some really good comments from a handful of people who showed up. That public comment is the culmination of a year's worth of public comment and probably 15 or more public comment sessions that we've had, both with community members, the university, the Student Senate of NIU. We had community meetings at various locations throughout the community that were very highly publicized. And as you mentioned, Mayor, our task force of 30 members met on at least 5 different occasions as a full group, and numerous untold separate meetings in the 4 groups that those committee members broke down into to get very specific detailed feedback on 4 different areas. The plan was well received by the Planning and Zoning Commission. They made a unanimous favorable recommendation to the City Council that the plan be approved. Moving forward, just to give everybody a little bit of additional feedback, the public comment period, the previously publicized public comment period, officially ended last Friday. However, we are still willing and still taking comments on the internet or phone calls from anybody that is still reading the plan. For those who have not yet seen the plan, please feel free to go to the city's website and to the AGN page, and you can download the plan, review it. If anybody has any thoughts, comments, please feel free to send them to us. There is still an opportunity to be heard and to effectuate any change on the plan. 2 remaining important dates are in November. So on November 13th, which is a Tuesday, your Committee of the Whole will hear a presentation, much like I've presented to other groups, outlining some of the history and recommendations of the plan. Our goal at that meeting is to provide you with all of the public comment that we've received and see if there's anything else you would like to have changed in the plan before it's finalized and then brought back to you for final action. And that final action date will be November 26th at your regular meeting on a Monday November 26th. And that will be an ordinance that we will ask you to approve, that will be approving this Annie Glidden North Revitalization Plan as an update, a sub-area plan update to our existing comprehensive plan. So assuming that plan is approved at that point, we will then move into some of the implementation stages that are outlined in the plan, and we'll be looking for council direction on many of those items as well. So with that, again, please feel free to contact me with any questions or comments on the plan.
Thank you, Joellen. Moving right along, now presentations. The first one is our FY 2018 Human Services Funding Annual Report on Hope Haven, our emergency shelter. Director Mike Newman is here with us. I know Mike would like to speak to DeKalb's big victory the other night, but you're here tonight to talk about Hope Haven, so welcome to have you. Nice to have you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor, Mayor Smith, and the City Council. Thanks for having us up here. I am a coach for DeKalb High School, and shouts out to those guys who are finished the season 8-1 and over in DeKalb. This Saturday, we'll be playing our playoff game against Lake Zurich, so I hope you guys can always find your way out there and come support the DeKalb Barb, so that'll be a great thing. Just moving along, in talking about our great agency over at Hope Haven, one of the things that I want to talk about, is just the nature of what we do over at Hope Haven, and that it's a very difficult job that we do, and hats off to all social service programs in the city of DeKalb and the county. But one of the dynamics that I want to talk about is when people show up at our place at Hope Haven, they have no keys. And one of the things of me being at Hope Haven for over 17 years is realizing how much keys are a reflection of life in general. And when we work with individuals who have no keys, it's a very very hard task of getting those people keys. And so it takes a united group of people, this county, and all the people who put into Hope Haven. And so when you think about keys and how much of they are a reflection of people's lives and where they at, is one of the difficult things that we try to do is get those people back keys. And some of those people that we work with are addicts. We work with people with mental illnesses. We work with people who just are down on their luck. So at Hope Haven, we have a whole gamut of different things, and sometimes you hear things in the city about our place, and I just want to stand up and say that we work with all those individuals in this county, and our goal is to make them good citizens of DeKalb. Going forward, I just want to talk about the Nights of Shelter. As of last year, we provided 18,713 nights of shelter. Again, that's a great feat to the county of DeKalb, and also we average 51 people a night, serving 51 people a night, and we provided over 50,000 meals. That's one of the great things about this community, is that our dinner is provided by a family or a church every night. And so hats off to the DeKalb County. I can't say enough about the people in DeKalb who provides for our people at Hope Haven. Also, we have an emergency shelter program. Our emergency program provides shelter up to 90 days for any individual who is seeking shelter that's a DeKalb County resident for at least a year. What we do there is provide case management, mental health services, job employment classes, all the above, to try to get people back on their feet. And sometimes it takes over 90 days to rehabilitate a person who may have experienced homelessness for over 90 days. And so sometimes our people stay from 6 months to a year. And we try to get those guys in programs such as Section 8, public housing, and also some of the programs that we run at Hope Haven, which is our SRO program, which we call a single room occupancy program, where we have our hard to house people in-house. We house up to 12 people with a dual diagnosis of a mental illness in-house. Also, we have a Dresser Court location where we house up to 26 people in a single apartment, where we continue to give them services as well. But the people at Dresser Court is a lower risk than the ones we house at Hope Haven. And so those are some of the great things that we are able to provide to some of the people who have mental illnesses in the community. Also, we have a rapid rehousing program. Our rapid rehousing program consists of providing ongoing monetary services to people who move out of the program, such as families, and also single men who may move out, who may need a down payment to help supplement some of the cash that they may spend trying to move out. And so, again, we have a gamut of different services that we also offer. The last program I want to talk about is our homeless prevention program. Our homeless prevention program, we help prevent people from coming into shelter. And as of the last actually in July, we had received funding in July, and we actually went through all the funding. We was able to prevent 29 families from coming into shelter from July, and we just went through all the funding as of October. So again, it's such a need to help and continue to help and get those things done. But one of the things I really want to talk about is just the great job that all us in social services do in this county, how we come together and try to put our heads together to make sure that we are helping the indigent and those who are without. And so with that said, if you guys have any questions.
Okay. Any questions or comments for Mike Newman from Hope Haven? If not, thank you, Mike. Appreciate all you do in our community. Yep. Okay, we have several proclamations. I'm going to keep a couple of them relatively brief, and I'll explain why. The first one is a proclamation that I will be presenting a week from tomorrow night on the 30th of October to a DeKalb native. Richard Jenkins made his debut in the entertainment business, at least outside of the city of DeKalb, in 1974 with a broadcast that he was involved in on great performances. Over the next 44 years, Richard Jenkins would appear in over 80 films, 23 television shows, and over the past couple of months, the Egyptian Theater has been successful in showcasing about 8 of his favorite movies that he's been in. And the final movie that will be shown next Tuesday night will be his latest one, on which he was nominated for an Oscar, and that is The Shape of Water. Richard Jenkins is a DeKalb native, and we're excited not only to see his movie for those of folks who have not seen it, but Richard Jenkins will be here to accept this proclamation, which I will read to him in length, not ad nauseum, but in length. And we're going to present him with a key to the city of DeKalb. And so it's going to be great to have Richard Jenkins back. I see a couple of folks from the Egyptian Theater here tonight. Thank you not only for doing this, but it's great to have Richard come back into our city, and I look forward to personally meeting him next Tuesday night. So that's our first proclamation tonight. Thank you. Our second is proclaiming Youth Outlook 20th anniversary. I, Jerry Smith, as mayor of the city of DeKalb, do hereby proclaim that DeKalb will continue to support its LGBTQ community and want to officially thank and congratulate the Youth Outlook organization on its 20 years of providing support and outreach to the LGBTQ youth in 6 northern Illinois counties, including DeKalb County, with its drop-in center in our city. And its drop-in center is over at the Congregational Church on North 1st Street. So we will be giving this to the Youth Outlook Board of Directors for the presentation at their November 3 event in the suburbs. We have one employee recognition, and I'd like to make a few comments before I read this. We have a certificate of appreciation for a City of DeKalb employee, and I will tell you this, that we should be honoring each and every one of our employees. We don't have the time for 230 or 240 certificates, but this one's a special because it's presented to a young lady, Ruth Scott, who was our executive assistant to not only the city manager but to the mayor. Ruth really stepped up big time after the resignation of Susanna Herman as our city clerk, and ultimately to the selection of Lynn Fazekas as our city clerk. She stepped up not only in her role there, but as one of our deputy city clerks. She just stepped up big time. You know, I like to say to folks that if you need to know what's going on in this building, see Ruth Scott. If she doesn't know, she'll put you in the right direction. I see Ruth is here, not in an official capacity, but we're delighted to present this certificate of appreciation, and do allow me to read it. This certificate of appreciation is hereby presented to Ruth Scott for her professional and dedicated service to the City of DeKalb through her willingness to fulfill the duties of the city clerk and her help in maintaining continuity in the city manager's office. October 22, 2018, signed by Molly Talkington, our interim city manager, and by myself, Jerry Smith, as mayor. Ruth, if you'd come up, I'd like to present this to you. I don't know if Ruth ever imagined herself walking down that table, but we do appreciate her, and I thought it was just appropriate that we did that to give special recognition to Ruth. Ruth is the one who usually prepares all these certificates of appreciation, so it's nice to be able to present you with one. Right. I have one other one that is not on the agenda. Tomorrow night in DeKalb, 5 women will be up for the honor of Athena, which is a special event held yearly in DeKalb. 2 women tomorrow night will be recognized as women of accomplishment. These are women who have been in the community for some time and who truly have lived a life of service. One of those women is Mary Pritchard, who was at Northern for many, many years. She is the wife of our former Representative Bob Pritchard, and she is going to be honored as a woman of accomplishment. The other one is one who you've not only seen up here, but I know you've heard her many, many times, and that is one of our Women of Accomplishment recipients tomorrow night at the banquet is our own Kate Norrico. Kate, congratulations. So behave yourself tomorrow night, okay?
I'll get it out tonight.
Okay. Okay, that is all of our presentations and proclamations. Let's move along to the approval of the mayor's appointments. These are usually done in an omnibus vote of council. Tonight we do have 2 appointments. One is Ron Klein, who is a longtime attorney in the city of DeKalb, recently retiring as the county zoning officer for DeKalb County. Some of the background material that was on the website today will give you a more complete background on Ron, but I'm delighted to be able to appoint Ron Klein to the Planning and Zoning Commission for the completion of a 5-year term through December 31, 2019. I'd also like to ask approval, if I may, of Rachel Farrell to the Citizens Environmental Commission for a 2-year term through December 31, 2020. Rachel has been a member of the city of DeKalb for 9 years. She's very, very involved in environmental studies, from which she earned a bachelor's degree from Northern in 2015. She's done volunteer work for the Nachusa Grasslands. She's done volunteer work for the Morton Arboretum, and I think will be a great fit for the Citizens Environmental Commission. So with that, I'd like to ask for a motion to approve those 2 appointments.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Alderman Noriko, seconded by Alderman Marquardt. Any discussion on these appointments? If not, roll call.
Marquardt,
Yes.
Fagan,
Yes.
Noriko,
Yes.
Verbic,
Yes.
Favor,
Yes.
Jacobson,
Yes.
Fanouken,
Yes.
Smith.
Yes.
8
Thank you very much. So move. Prior to moving into public participation this evening, I'd like to just give since we're talking about appointments, we will be appointing a new city manager here for the city of DeKalb, hopefully by the end of the year. And I'd like to just give a brief report of where we are in this process, which actually started last April. We have advertised for the position. I'm told that we have 45 to 50 applications for this position. We're working with HR.gov, a professional search firm, and we will be providing names to her of community members who will be interviewing. That we will do this week. I thank Pat Fagan, who has been on our executive committee here moving forward before we engage the entire council. We'll be asking those folks to join us after the 16th of November. And that is the date from which the representative, Heidi Voorhees from HR.gov, will be presenting the top 20 candidates to this council. That's a lot of folks, a lot of names, but this council, if you recall during discussions that we had earlier this summer, they really want to see a broader scope of folks instead of just the final 5 or 6. We will then have interviews, and we would hope that by the first week in December or thereabouts, we would be focusing on those interviews. Those interviews will be comprised of 3 committees. One committee will be what I call an employee committee. These will be representatives from the employees of the city of DeKalb, both bargaining, union, and non-bargaining representatives. We will also have a committee comprised of our department heads, and then the large committee, and again, Pat and I have not yet decided on the final number, probably somewhere between 8 and 10 committee members, community members, who will comprise that 3rd committee. Pat, do you have anything else to add?
No, I don't.
Okay, good. I think we're in pretty good shape. We're moving along, and I wanted to make that report to not only the council, but to the public, that we are, in fact, moving along fairly nicely on that. Okay, item number 4 is public participation. This is that place on the agenda that anyone who would like to speak to any item not listed on our agenda for tonight to speak. I have no speaker request forms. I have 1 speaker request form, but that will be on an item that is on the agenda. Seeing none, hearing none, I will move on then to our consent agenda. Again, we usually approve this by omnibus vote unless a member of the council feels otherwise. Let me read the items on the consent agenda. Number 1, approval of City Council minutes. Minutes of the Special Committee of the Whole meeting of September 18, 2018. B, minutes of the Committee of the Whole meeting of September 24, 2018. C, minutes of the regular City Council meeting of September 24, 2018. Number 2, receive and file accounts payable and payroll through October 22, 2018 in the amount of $2,954,779.87. B, investment and bank balance summary through August 2018. C, year-to-date revenues and expenditures for the general fund and water fund through August 2018. And finally, D, FY 2018 Human Services Funding Third Quarter Report. I'd ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Alderman Favor, seconded by Alderman Verbeek. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Fagan,
Yes.
Noriko,
Yes.
Verbic,
Yes.
Favor,
Yes.
Jacobson,
Yes.
Fanouken,
Yes.
Markwart,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
8-0.
Thank you. So moved. So let's move now to items for separate action. And the first one is Resolution 2018-138, authorizing an intergovernmental agreement with Northern Illinois University for the coordination of integrated transit services. I'd entertain a motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Alderman Favor, seconded by Alderman Markwart. Speaking to this item is Transit Manager Marcus Cox. Marcus?
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, City Council. I'm here before you this evening to request approval to authorize an intergovernmental agreement with Northern Illinois University for transit services. Before we discuss some of the highlights of the IGA, though, I'd like to kind of go through some of a brief background on how we've gotten to this point. This is a slide you may recognize from the February 26, 2018 Committee of the Whole meeting, in which Public Works Director Mr. Tim Holdeman presented, kind of going over the idea that we were at that point in consolidating the two independent systems within the city. And so that point, what it was is that we said at this point we're running two independent systems, one which is operated by the city, which would be VAC. And VAC operates primarily paratransit service, and that is recognized in the yellow box. So your paratransit is your door-to-door service that you're seeing, kind of the smaller type vehicles on the roadway, which represents probably 75% of their service, with the other portion being the fixed route. So the green line, formerly known as the green line, the blue line, which is now the 18 or the 21. And then we looked at the NIU bus system, which is the Husky line. Husky line is operated independently by the university and provides approximately 90 to 95% fixed route with minimal paratransit focused on those that are eligible for that system. Just to kind of give you a little bit of an idea on this consolidation, Transvac provides approximately 230,000 rides a year, and Husky line provides about 1.3 million. And combining these, we would allow us to put everything under the city, which would then encompass both of the strengths of the services that are provided. So in this case, VAC would operate the paratransit service, which is their primary portion of their service, and Husky line would then operate the fixed route portion of the service. And this would, again, give that opportunity for federal and state funding for the entire system as a whole, which would benefit the community. Since the February, since the February 26th meeting, we have accomplished numerous tasks, which we have demonstrated here on our transit consolidation implementation timeline. The green banners represent agreements or documents that have helped us move forward in our progress to get to this point in October. That includes the TDP, which ended in October of last year, the RFP for the fixed route transit service provider in July, and then the IGA, which we're presenting here today. The red banners show the onboarding of transit personnel to the transit team in order to allow this to continue moving forward. And that included a transit coordinator, a transit grants administrator, and a transit manager. And then the light blue represents any of your operational items. And this goes back in all the way on the far left for October of last year, and then on October of this year would be the VAC renewals. So October 1 of 2017 and 2018 represent the VAC renewals, and right in the middle represents one of the most important pieces, which is that partial consolidation, which is on August 20th, the core route network, was implemented. And that was the NIU city routes, which was a 3-route, 5-bus system that operated in the majority of the service area and allowed integration between for fares and for transfers. So individuals could utilize both the city and the NIU buses to get to where they needed to go. Today represents the journey that we have taken to reach this point, and completing 9 out of the 10 tasks as we move forward to that 10th and final task, which would be our ideal January 1st, 2019, which would be the full consolidation of the services. And that's the DeKalb transit system that we're familiar with, which is becoming a thing of the past. The past represents the independent 2 systems operating kind of on their own. And it's coming from someone that's been involved in DeKalb transportation for the last 10 years and being in the mix of it. I can say that while there was not a lot of communication, there was efforts to get this to this point and consolidate it and make this the best transit system that it could be. And it was never purposeful. Everyone did what their job was, but I think we're reaching a point in which we can take it to the next level. And by doing that, looking at the future with that consolidated transit system, you get the communication, the consolidated fares, and the transfer that overall allow everyone an opportunity to benefit from a transit system, including the students, the faculty, the staff, the community residents, and everyone as a whole. Which is why we're here this evening to provide you with some of the highlights on the intergovernmental agreement. So included in that, the NIU campus routes and other fixed route service, which means that both parties have 50% interest and stake in going through and making equal part decisions. Freedomobile, which I talked about, which is the door-to-door service, that would transfer over to VAC, and then VAC would absorb that into their current structure of service. Additional transit services. Pretty much what this implies is that there's nothing in there that would preclude or limit either party from attempting to extend or add additional service that would benefit everyone. Looking at services extending eastward to Elgin, Aurora, Elburn. City Transit Manager, which would come in and oversee everything that's going on and help with any questions that would occur from either side. A 3-year planning budget, which would be a continuous 3-year rolling planning budget in order that would again have input from both sides and the reasonable review, which would again, both parties have equal stake in what is being discussed. There's a 30-day period from any time that a recommendation is made in which those parties can go back, make comments, make suggestions or recommendations. In the event that those recommendations are not, there's no agreement that is reached, it would then go to the NIU Board of Trustees or the City Council, depending on the side. NIU would make a payment on the first calendar year of 2019 for $2.5 million, which would allow us some opportunity to have a little bit of extra money for any cash flow that might be held up at the state level, and then in subsequent years there'd be a minimum of 40% annual direct costs that would be contributed by NIU. Oh, I'm sorry, going back to the $2.5 million, that would be over 9 payments beginning in January 2019. All of this and everything that we have going on here provides us with what we need in order to take the future of DeKalb Transit forward. What we're looking at here is staffing, so the incorporation of a potential third member of our group, which would be a transportation planner to assist in everything that's occurring. expansion, like I mentioned earlier, with eastward, looking at Elburn, Elgin, opportunities to move outside of the community itself once we've gotten this taken care of. Technology, both internal and external technology, that would be passenger counters, system-wide bus trackers for all buses, and the ability to operate and run reports that would allow us to perform more efficiently when it comes to our annual and quarterly reports. And finally, our facility, which would allow us one location in which we could all operate from, house the vehicles, perform maintenance in, and have a system that would allow everyone an opportunity to be in one spot. We're also looking at the potential of a park and ride type option as well that would extend out. The future of DeKalb Transit is here. This agreement is a key element to ensuring that transit opportunities for the entire community move forward, and we ask the council approve the intergovernmental agreement with NIU. At this time, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Thank you, Marcus. Any other comments or questions? Alderman Noriko.
The $2.5 million figure, how is that arrived at?
Based upon what we've looked at, we're estimating that the first year expense is going to be around $5 million for the fixed route service fee.
Okay.
And so we've taken the 2.5 and estimated that higher than the 40% at a 50%, just to kind of allow us some opportunity, some wiggle room to have that money available, and also to utilize as the kind of, like I mentioned, a little bit of the cash flow, having that there, and also to put back into the system as a whole.
So I would assume that NIU approached it with being comfortable with that $5 million figure, and therefore the $2.5 million is their share at this point.
Yes, ma'am. I was going to say I can defer to Mr. Heckman if he would like to make any comment on that.
I will say that, yes, we have, what's the word I'm looking for, meticulously looked through a lot of the details, and really that's the burden of this overall program, is understanding the cost details. And so after going through all that, we are very comfortable that we are starting this off on a very good footing. We think it's fair, and that's what we're here to do, is have a fair agreement with the city, and I'm very comfortable with that.
Okay, thank you.
Any further comments? You know, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that one of our own up here, Bill Finucane, deserves a lot of credit. Bill was for many, many years a transit director of transportation at Northern. He's been very involved in our DeKalb Sycamore area transportation study, from which this sort of morphed out of. And so, Bill, I just want to thank you for your service to this community, for helping us get this done.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to comment, John, you may not be aware, but the early discussions of this combination goes back more than 20 years. And we're certainly very excited to see it come into fruition. And we know the benefits of it, of the expanded service, the opportunity for advanced federal and state grants that this consolidation is going to provide to us. So thank you both.
Any further questions? Alderman Markwart.
The other part of the money, am I to understand, comes from DSATs, from the grant process?
Yes.
So it's not, just want to make clear for the public that it's not a $2.5 million coming out of our regular general fund.
No, I'm sorry. Yeah, that's correct. The $2.5 million that would be contributed on behalf of NIU would be the local match, and then the other part would be the 65% that would be made up of the federal and state grants. Correct.
Okay. Good.
Okay. Marcus, Tim, John, thank you very, very much. There's a motion on the floor. Any further discussion? If not, roll call.
Noriko?
Yes.
Verbic?
Yes.
Favor?
Yes.
Jacobson?
Yes.
Finucane?
Yes.
Markwart,
Yes.
Fagan,
Yes.
Smith.
Yes.
8 aye.
Thank you very much. So moved.
Thank you very much.
Our next item is Resolution 2018-139, authorizing the award of a bid to D. Ryan Tree and Landscape LLC for snow plowing of public sidewalks, bike paths, and alleyways for a 3-year period, 2019 to 2021 snow seasons. And entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second. It's been moved by Alderman Verbeek, seconded by Alderman Favor to discuss this item. And before I turn it over to Brian Favor, I'd like to let everyone know that Alderman Fagan has recused himself from voting on this issue. And to explain a little bit further now and open it up for any discussion that the council may have is our Assistant Public Works Director, Brian Favor. Brian?
Thank you, Mayor. Approval of this resolution would award a contract to D. Ryan Tree and Landscape for snow removal in the Central Business District. In addition to that, it also includes a good portion of the sidewalks along Route 23 and Sycamore Road, Annie Glidden Road, the bridges on North First Street, Hillcrest, and Lucinda, along with the alleyways throughout the city. D. Ryan was the only bidder on an RFP that was released on September 14th. The contract would be for 3 years. The price has a slight increase over what we're currently paying, but the increase is minimal. Each snow event and each snow season is different, so in terms of figuring out an exact dollar amount, it's hard to do that, but on average, we typically pay about $35,000 for the CDB or CBD portion of the contract, and about $30,000 annually for the alleyways and the arterial sidewalks, including the bridges. I know this has been discussed with council and the Finance Advisory Committee, and there was some discussion on eliminating this contract as a whole, or at least portions of this contract. I did want to make you aware that the contract does include a termination clause that allows the city to terminate the contract with 7 days written notice, so we can terminate the contract at any time. We did discuss this with D. Ryan as well, that it would be a topic for tonight's agenda, and so he is aware of the potential for complete elimination of the contract, or at least portions of what was included in the contract. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Questions or comments of Brian? Alderman Noriko.
Brian, I realize this is probably pure speculation, but just out of curiosity, have you gotten any feel for what the predictions are for the winter?
I haven't personally, no. I would hate to even predict.
I mean, I was wondering if
I could do that, I'm buying a lotto ticket tonight.
I was wondering if you kind of looked at a variety of scientific and non-scientific sources and, you know, kind of warned your crews, okay, you know, it looks kind of bad this year, or if you're just kind of like, okay, it's snowing, we now deal with it.
Pretty much it's snowing and we now deal with it. No, it's really hard to predict that, and really, you can't just go by how much snow we get. You know, 2 inches of snow every other day can be worse than 12 inches of snow at one time. So it's really hard to predict that type of snow event.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay.
I'm surprised, Kate, that you didn't ask Alderman Jacobson that question to predict the weather. Dave, do you have any better answer?
I left my crystal ball at home.
Okay, very, very good.
Oh.
Any further questions or comments? Mike, Alderman Markwart.
Just for instance, the alleyways and the bike paths, you know, we talked during budget discussions about various parts. I'm assuming that if we did away with that, that would, that part of the contract, that city staff would have to pick up on that part, at least the alleys.
Correct.
How
Yeah,
big of
of the portion of the contract, if you figure $65,000 a year for the CBD and the sidewalks, the alleyways overall are probably the least expensive, and it would be the easiest for us to pick up. But in terms of cost savings, because you can do that with a pickup truck, with a blade, in terms of the service provided through this contract, it is the least expensive service that we would pay.
I guess I'm looking for how much. I'm assuming that would add additional overtime or additional costs, and what type of comparison to what we're paying contracted wise to what it would cost us in-house.
Andy, did you have any figures on that? I'll turn that question over to Andy Rye, our street superintendent.
Cost comparison wise, it'd be tough to average exactly. The issue we get into with 17 trucks on the road total, 4 of those trucks currently are operated by water employees as well. So we play with everybody within the department to do what we have to do. Streets would be a first priority. The other issue would be level of service. So while there would be some cost adjustment, there could potentially be added overtime to do so. The timeliness of doing alleys would more or less fall to a lower priority as opposed to the main roads and everything else we have to do. So in essence, for a 4-inch snowstorm, we might be in, on, and off trying to adjust for rest periods and things like that. Hypothetically, it could be a day to 2 days later when we actually have available staff to do so.
To do that. And
Mayor, I'd like to add. So if you look at the contract, the total showing in the budget is $45,000 and $30,000, and when we put together the budget reductions, it was $35,000 and $30,000. So there's $10,000 left. That if council chooses to eliminate both services, we'd essentially move the $10,000 from contracted services to salary and benefits to cover some of the cost of our staff doing the alleys and bike paths.
In other words, you anticipated a question like Alderman Marquardt's as it relates to the responsibility of our own staff.
Right. So we did leave a little funding
if in
there.
fact council decides to do away with those options.
Yes.
Alderman Fanouken.
I noticed in here that bike paths, is that all the bike paths?
No, there's very few bike paths. There's specifically the bike path in question is between Fairview Oaks Drive and Greenwood Acres Drive. There's one path there, a full pickup truck wide. So in general, there's only one major bike path, or bike path rather. Everything else is in generality sidewalks and or alleys.
All right, the reason I ask is because I thought the vast majority of the bike paths are all on Park District property, and I was going to ask, why are we plowing Park District property?
Correct. There's just one bike path, a stretch of maybe a quarter mile that's actually city-owned.
Thank you.
Any further comments? We do have a motion on the floor and a second. Roll call.
Verbeek?
Yes.
Favor?
Yes.
Jacobson?
Yes.
Fanouken?
Yes.
Marquardt?
Yes.
Noriko?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
7 aye.
Thank you very much. Motion passes. Welcome back, Alderman Fagan. Item number 3, Resolution 2018-140, authorizing support for DeKalb County case number DK 1832 for a solar garden on properties located on Twombly Road, approximately 1,300 feet west of Annie Glidden Road in DeKalb Township, DeKalb County, subject to conditions recommended by the City of DeKalb. I'd entertain a motion, please.
So moved.
Second?
I would take that motion from Alderman Verbeek, seconded by Alderman Favor. Speaking to this item, prior to any discussion, is our Community Development Director, Joellen Charlton.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. As you may recall, I was here about a month ago to introduce this topic to the Council when we received notice by DeKalb County of a zoning hearing case processing through their system. It's case number DK 1832. Because the unincorporated property lies within 1.5 miles of our planning jurisdiction, the county's required to provide us with notice so that we can comment and review the plan for conformance to our design standards and comprehensive plan and other infrastructure needs that could come up as the result of development on this property. As you might recall, the council did approve a resolution that we were to present to the DeKalb County hearing officer to ask for additional time so that we could spend a little time with the applicant going over some of the concerns that we had raised and shared with the council at the last meeting, present those to the hearing officer and ask them for time so that we could go through that, and also provide an opportunity for residents in the area or property owners in the area to comment on this project as well. The county hearing officer at their meeting did grant the city that request, so we were thankful that they did that and provided us with that additional opportunity. And since that time, we've spent time with the applicant and anybody that we had questions with and city staff to provide answers to the questions. So again, this property is generally suburban estates and suburban apartments on the southwest corner of Annie Glidden Road and Twombly. They are proposing this garden site on the southwest side of the 80 acres. So in the exhibit at the top, there's area marked county. That's the unincorporated part. It's immediately north of property that is located within the city, south of the dashed line. The solar garden site is shown on the map. Again, solar gardens are becoming a lot more prominent at this point. The county, in last count I saw, had processed over 30 individual applications for solar gardens throughout DeKalb County. This is an image of what a solar garden would look like, and on this particular property, because again, the sun tracks east and west, those panels, as you see them in that picture, if it was the morning time, they would be facing the east and then would track over to the west as the sun moved across the sky during the day. So the panels would be facing west at the end of the day. As part of the conversation after the hearing officer gave us permission to have another month to work with the candidate, we did work closely with the applicant and to address some of the concerns that we brought up. And as you will see, this resolution before you tonight is the result of that work. And basically this resolution would be forwarded to DeKalb County as a resolution of support for the project pending their agreement to conditions, which we have worked through with the applicant. We would expect and hope that the county would approve those conditions. And again, because the solar farm issue is one that may or may not be executed in the future, these conditions would only apply at such point if the county approved them, number one, and number two, if the state, who ultimately has the approval authority over these, actually grants the approval to this. So this agreement, or something very close to this agreement, if it's approved by the council, would be executed if and when the county approves it and the state approves it. This graphic shows the location and relative size of the proposed solar garden just south of Suburban Estates. So that's basically on the west half of that 80-acre parcel. I'm going to go through real quickly what some of the conditions were that we worked through with them. They're outlined on pages 2 and 3 of the staff report. The first major issue that we wanted to make sure was addressed was the platting of additional right-of-way. So the property to the south shows improved property that, according to our long-range plan, at some point in the future should have a connection between there through this property and connecting with Twombly Road. And that's on both the west and east sides of the solar garden property. So one of the conditions is that the applicant will replat this entire 80 acres as a 4-lot subdivision, so 1 lot for each of the apartment complexes and 1 lot for each of the vacant parcels. As part of that platting, they would also agree to dedicate 80 feet of right-of-way on both the west and east sides of the west half, so basically running on both sides of that Solar Garden property. That's a dedication at this point in case we need it in the future. There's no requirement at this point for them to construct roads or sidewalks or parkway trees or any of the other improvements that we normally have in a right-of-way. What I will note on the western side, so between the Solar Garden and the farm field to the west, we do have an existing storm sewer facility that is partially in an easement. That facility was built, we believe at the time Eden's Garden to the north was developed, and the storm sewer ran through that. As part of the platting, we want them to make sure that the new platted right-of-way covers all of the easement that we currently have in that location, and they've agreed to locate that and make sure that that's included. Again, we will need an agreement to be ready to execute in the event that the county and the state approve this project. As part of that agreement, we need to make sure that the owner would continue to maintain liability and continue to maintain the property. So the areas that are proposed to be dedicated as right-of-way are currently being maintained and mowed and utilized as access points to the individual apartment properties. So until such time as the city were to actually come in and build a road, the agreement would provide that they would continue to carry coverage on that property to hold the city not liable for any injuries or accidents in the area, as well as to maintain the property. We've also asked them to provide an end-of-road barrier along the east side of the project, where one of our road dead ends into the project and just kind of ends in a fence. It's a situation that could be dangerous if somebody perceives that they can continue on that location, so they have agreed to do that. We also were concerned about the availability of water and fire hydrants to serve the property. The property is unincorporated and is served by wells, not city water, but the City of DeKalb Fire Department does provide service to this area, so our guys do get called there to serve the property, the existing property, and they would also be called to serve this property. So one of the things we asked them to do was conduct a flow and pressure test of the existing facilities to make sure there was adequate supply and flow to handle any service calls they might get in the area. Our fire department did go and conduct this test with them and was provided with information from that test that shows there is adequate flow and pressure to serve this particular use, since it is a lower intensity use, but anything a lot higher would require an upgrade to that system. But for this use, it's fine. We talked to them about access into the property or into the solar facility. So there's roads, paved roads in and around the facility providing access to the apartment units, but the earlier plans that they provided showed connecting those roads to this facility with gravel drives. We instead require through our process paved surfaces, so we ask them to provide paved surfaces up to the fenced-in area for any of the access leading up to that area. We also ask them to provide sliding gates into the enclosed fenced area instead of the swinging gates as have been proposed on the original plans, and to equip each of those access points with a Knox box facility so our fire department could get into the gates as needed to service the area. Within the fenced area, so the dark line at the bottom of the solar array is a gravel path that we would allow. That would be for their personnel to come in and service the property, mow the property. They didn't have this on their original plan. They added it as a result of our request. And that gravel drive also includes a T-type turnaround at the west end of the property. We asked them to confirm grading and drainage on the property. I think you might recall they showed farm field tiles existing, so they're going to confirm that those are operational and adequate and that they're not significantly changing anything. That will need to be, they will need to provide us with documentation that that is continuing. In terms of the setbacks along the south property line were determined to be fine. They're far exceeding both our requirements and the county's requirements. However, on the west side, where they're providing that 80-foot right-of-way, we did ask them to include a new setback from the east line of that west right-of-way of 25 feet, or the county setback requirement if it's greater. So it would be the greater of 25 feet or the county setback requirement. And finally, the last thing that we talked to them about was landscape screening for the properties to the south. So right now, if you go out there, you can see kind of a mishmash of landscape screening that's intermittent along the entire south property line. It's not of high quality when it's there. You tend to get some low quality grade plant materials that are there. Doesn't mean they don't provide good screening. They do, especially in the summertime, but there are blank spots. So we did ask them, and they agreed to fill in those areas with material that would grow to a height that would provide adequate screening in a few years. So again, they'll be required to provide us with a landscape plan to show that that condition can be met. We did have the public hearing before the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting last Wednesday. Actually, it wasn't an official hearing. It was we noticed it like a hearing so that owners within 250 feet and all owners to the south down to Hillcrest were provided with notice of an opportunity to come and provide us with their comments. The Planning and Zoning Commission did listen to a few comments from a couple of people, as well as the applicant, who did agree to the conditions that were outlined in the proposal. Again, like I mentioned, your consideration tonight is for a resolution of support that would be presented to DeKalb County, asking them to approve this project, or if they approve this project, to approve it subject to the conditions that are listed in the agreement that are attached as an exhibit. I do have Brett Robinson from representing the owner is here in the audience if there are any questions for him tonight, or myself.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor and a second. Any discussion or questions of either Joe Ellen or the representative from the property owners? Alderman Fagan.
What's the life use of this?
25 years.
Okay, so if this is not maintained in a proper manner, or at the end of 25 years, could we ask for them giving a bond to the county so that it's just not abandoned and we've got to deal with that?
The county has really good requirements for making those provisions as part of their background. That's why we didn't ask for it, but that is something that they hold the bond and they require.
They do?
Yep.
Good.
So it's already there.
Good, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other discussion or questions? Roll call.
Favor?
Yes.
Jacobson?
Yes.
Fanouken?
Yes.
Markwart?
Yes.
Fagan?
Yes.
Noriko?
Yes.
Verbic?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
8 ayes.
Thank you. So moved. Okay, new or unfinished business are our last two items on the agenda tonight. The first is the sale of city-owned properties discussion. Again, both of these items will require or will get no action tonight, although we may very, very well have questions and comments. On the sale of city-owned properties, I once again ask Joellen Charlton to address this issue. Joellen.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. It's my understanding that back in 2016, the Council approved a policy that would ask staff to come back and revisit available properties on an annual basis to see if there are properties that should be marketed for sale, transferred to other units of local government. I know this has also been a topic of the budget discussion, given the situation that we're in, whether we want to push some of these properties further that we've hung on to for a while as a means to help us address some of our budget deficiencies within the community. This isn't a complete listing of all properties owned by the city, so I left off City Hall, properties for fire stations, water tanks, the airport, that sort of thing. We really tried to focus in on only those properties that could potentially have either a transfer sale, which would help us save money in terms of maintenance. We wouldn't have to pay for ongoing maintenance of those properties, or where we could turn the property over for sale for potentially some financial gain. So there's 28 or so slides. I can step through these real quickly if you'd like, or if you have specific questions about individual properties, I'm willing to handle it however the council would like.
Well, this was all provided in our background information. There may be specific questions regarding each, you know, the parcels that you had outlined to us. I guess your first question is, do we want to go through these, or have you had a chance to take a look at them, and are there any questions of any of the specifics? What I liked about this is it really gave us sort of a bird's eye view of not only where these were, but which ones staff would recommend as properties that perhaps were worth something, whether or not we wanted to market those. So, any comments or questions? Alderman Fagan.
Yeah, this is great. I mean, at least we get to see what we've got here, and that's what I wanted to see. Some of the small areas that we've got, you know, these remote small sections, we go out there and we cut that grass all the time and take care of it all the time, or what's that?
It depends. I contacted the Park District on a couple that I had questions about. So, for example, the one on Fotis Drive next to an existing Park District facility. It's in the area number 4. So I called the Park District just to see if they even knew we owned it or if they were maintaining it, and they're maintaining it. So they would be willing to consider transfer of that property. They, you know, we won't realize any savings from it because they are already maintaining it.
Right.
But it would clean things up. And I'm sure there's others that are in town that we do own that maybe we do maintain. But
suppose let's take a perfect example. You know, the buildings across the street here, the properties at First and Locust. They're across the street from each other, property at Fourth and Lincoln. How, if we proceeded on the sale of some of these properties, and I'd like to get rid of some of these properties, especially in the residential area where we've taken down the home and we've just got the empty lot. How, I guess, legally do we market this? I mean, we just can't pick a realtor. I mean, how does it go about it? What's the whole plan?
So falls into some categories. So the properties that are available for transfer, we would just talk to the entity that we feel it could be transferred to. The Park District's easy. The, you know, ComEd could be, I think there's one property in there we might want to transfer to ComEd. There may be some properties that make sense to transfer at little to no cost because they're basically not buildable, but they are adjacent to other properties that might want to expand their holding and have access to that property and take over the maintenance responsibility for us.
Like the place out on Annie Glidden Road?
Yes.
Yeah.
And in some cases, those owners have, one or both of the owners adjoining those properties have contacted us with some level of interest. So we would work with them to make sure their needs are met. You know, maybe we get a little bit of something if there's some value to the property, but if there's floodplain and some other issues that make it really, you know, it would be unusual for us to be able to sell it, that might be something that we would negotiate other parts to that deal, such as you might need to remove a building that exists on the property, or you would need to agree to mow the grass, and you would agree not to put any or certain types of buildings on that property. So we would provide, the exchange would be for agreements to do or not do certain things.
I guess my question was, I mean, do we sell it for sale by owner, or do we put this out to market?
We would still need to do, for the properties we truly want to sell,
Right.
we need to pay and spend some money to do some appraisals of the property so that we know what the value is and so that you know what you're getting. So we do have a couple of very marketable properties that
Right.
we acquired through either a court settlement or demolition or a tax sale, and the buildings are vacant and marketable and ready to go.
And one of those is in your ward, Pat, that one on 10th Street. I think that's your ward. And reading here, the property formerly housed a multi-unit residential unit. Prior to that neighborhood, the property included commercial development. The property fell into disrepair. The city obtained a demolition judgment. The building was demolished. The city filed a lien and later acquired the property on a demolition lien. The property has been restored to a vacant, flat, buildable site and is surrounded by residential property. Sale is recommended. So, that's the kind of thing that I think if we feel that, hey, this is a piece of property that makes sense to get that appraisal and all that, it certainly, if the council's primary objective here is to, as you say, Pat, get rid of some of those small ones in residential neighborhoods and to generate some income, would make sense to me. Alderman Marquardt.
Yeah, I think the ultimate goal is to get them back on the public tax rolls.
Right.
Yeah,
so,
it's not so much that we're going to be making an initial dollar amount on the sale so much as looking at it long-term and increasing that use of that property and putting it back on the tax rolls.
Amen.
Because that spreads out that tax bill, back again. The only other thing that I would like to see possibly is, like some of them, like Area 11, which is on the northeast corner of First and Locust, maybe taking a look at the zoning aspects of them to make the zoning the most attractive to a potential buyer to redevelop that area. Area 12 is central business, maybe Area 11 should be central business, or some kind of combination that might attract a developer who's looking to locate in that area to further enhance that and make that more attractive as a sale.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, any further comments? So basically, the direction that I think you're receiving from council tonight is that, yeah, we'd like to tighten these up. We'd like to take those properties that you've identified as marketable, perhaps give us a short list from this large list of 27 properties down to a half a dozen or 10 that make some sense. And
so you want to focus on the properties that can be sold?
Yes, right. I think
Okay.
so.
Yep.
I think
Not
so.
necessarily transferred or, okay.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Is there consensus on that?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Joellen.
Can I ask one more question?
Sure.
On the properties across the street here are the annex properties. I know for a number of years, those properties have been maintained to provide flexibility in what may happen here or to be an opportunity for redevelopment within a TIF district that could have a significant impact on assessed value. So I know that we've had a little bit of interest on behalf of people to purchase those properties and reuse them, either for their continued use to provide social service locations or other not-for-profits to occupy that space. That would not provide good EAV or increment for our TIF district. What could be huge for that property is if we were to do an RFP, a request for proposals, whereby we ask the development community to submit ideas for truly transformational projects on that property that would take that property from a 0 assessed value to something pretty sizable. And that would go a long way towards driving an increment that we could actually use in the future to do more projects with in the downtown. So that would be our recommendation on moving forward if we want to do something on that property, and we may or may not be ready to kind of advance that at this point, given where we're at with TIF. But I think that would be a far wiser scenario than simply selling the property to a third party who would either keep it off the tax rolls or continue to use it in its existing form. So I'm interested in your feedback on that site.
Alderman Jacobson.
Understanding that there's some significant challenges with that site, with parking and some of the other things going on over there. Again, realizing that it effectively would be a tear down and you'd have to build a much smaller facility if you wanted on-street parking and those things. Understanding that we still don't have any clear path or vision of what we want to do with this site, which again would be an adjacent development site that could generate a transformational project someday down the road. I mean, I would like to see what the feasibility of leasing that building would be by the city. I think we'd be probably better served at this point keeping ownership of that property, and we'll know it's not on the tax roll. We could be generating rent from that property, which would probably be well above and beyond what we'd take in our share of taxes if it were in the tax roll. Again, understanding over time, 5 or 8 or 10 years, the rent that can be collected on a property of that size, it should more than mitigate any of the tax burden that we're seeing as a parcel that we own, and give us the flexibility, again, if we decide we want to do something on this site, that we can move into that building for a short term. If we want to abandon this site and turn it into a development parcel of a size that could be transformational, understanding that the only other parcel that would be part of a transformational project has already gotten a very large TIF incentive in terms of verandas that we could have purchased at a relative discount, while less than we spent an investment in the building to make it a development parcel. I think our options are going to be limited. While I don't mind going out for RFP and seeing what the options are, I think the eventuality, understanding the market right now, would make more sense for us to explore renting that property.
Oh, we could do both. I mean, you could rent the property, but still go out with the RFP and come up with ideas from our development community that would be, I mean, we're looking for that, that, as you call it, transformational project. So
let the markets decide.
Let the market decide, yeah. Alderman Orico?
How much work needs to be done on the property across the street for it to be rentable?
We would go in and take a look at that. I think, you know, if a certain amount of investment needed to be made to the property, you might run into issues of providing accessibility and other required improvements. But to the extent that a user could go into the site without requiring an initial investment, you might be able to rent to certain use groups without making those. So we would, that's something we can look into and provide additional feedback. I'll talk to Thaddeus Mack, our chief building official, about what that might involve, and we can include that with the package we bring back to you at the next meeting.
Joellen, based on what you've heard tonight, hopefully there's a little bit more clear direction. I'd encourage you to get back to us at a time that would make sense to you and for us, to have further discussion as we sort of drill down on some of the more substantive properties, or on some of the properties that generated some more substantive discussion.
Right. We'll pick the properties that are revenue generating. We'll probably also get some quotes to provide to you on what it would cost to do appraisals on those properties, and then come back for some additional direction at that time.
Good.
Is there anything else from Dean or Molly? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, our next item under new and unfinished business, again, we will make no firm decision tonight, is on vacant building regulations and requirements discussion. We have an individual, Glenn Goring, who would like to speak to this item, but first of all, to get some information and to give us a lay of the land, if you will, I'm going to ask Chief Building Official Thaddeus Mack to make a few comments, and then Glenn, we're going to get you on with any comments that you have regarding this item. Thaddeus.
Thank you, Mayor. Excuse me. And good evening, council members. Previously, I brought forward this item for discussion and some direction for vacant building registration ordinance, and this was back in February. I think that this happened at the request of Mayor Smith and Alderman Verbeek. At that time, I was asked to bring forward some more information, do a little bit more research, and kind of weigh out some more of our options. In doing so, I've found additional communities, looked at some of the communities that council members had asked me to look at as far as what they do for their vacant property registration. I can tell you that there runs a gamut of everything from every vacant property must be registered, only foreclosures, some handle it in-house, some handle it through a third-party outsource. Understanding that DeKalb is a unique place, and I believe I put this in the memo, that I think there's a lot of unique factors we want to consider, obviously being a college community, that we want to be sensitive to those buildings that we know will be vacant for a period of time. So to define what vacant would cover. Also to recognize that we have within our existing commercial building inspection program, something that wasn't noted as well as I would have hoped in this memo that I brought forth. But we do have that through our commercial building inspection program, that there are vacant properties that have to be registered, those that fall under the definition of commercial building. So this would, essentially this item up for discussion tonight, I would like some direction on, do I need to continue down this path? If so, what are we looking at? Do we want to do this internally, which I believe last time was not the will of the council, going out to a third-party vendor? Then how do we want to define vacant? How do we want to, what properties are we hoping to catch? And certainly I can answer any questions to that effect of what I've seen in this time that I've been here as far as vacant properties and concerns that I have.
Well, I certainly like the idea of the third-party vendor, and you gave us some examples and some of the municipal references, frankly, from other communities. Prior to any discussion, though, or any questions from our council, I'd like to ask Glenn Goring, who has indicated a desire to speak to this item. Glenn? And stick around here, Thaddeus. We may have more questions for you.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. First of all, when I heard about this vacant building proposal, see, I'm really a simple guy, you know, and we can't do things on a handshake anymore. So what we propose, and it becomes a legal issue, will become a play on words going forwards. I personally would like to really understand what is going to be considered a vacant building. If you have a building that is for lease or for sale, and you have no violations, will that be considered a vacant building? Because there's plenty of them downtown right now that certainly need tenants. So that's what I wanted to address about that, but this all ties together with the bigger picture. I got so excited when you had me come up here, I forgot what I really wanted to say originally. There's nothing I can do or say that is more important than what I heard earlier in this discussion with the gentlemen who were talking about helping our fellow man in the community. I can't say enough about those projects. I always try to help, but I never do enough. Very recently, a man came up to me and asked for $20 because he wanted gas money. Well, I didn't just hand him $20. I'm smarter than that. I went to his car. I brought him to the gas station because he was living in his car. Yeah, we take a lot for granted in what we do each and every day because we are very blessed, but there's an awful lot of people who aren't so fortunate who really need help. I know I'm a little off topic here, but it's been so long since they talked into this meeting. I just wanted to get that out there. I don't think they're still here, but God bless them for it. It's really incredible. Okay, another issue that I didn't write down that my brother mentioned to me today was snow removal. You see, back in the day, and I hate to keep saying that, but we used to all be responsible for our own snow removal, which was fine, but the dynamics of snow removal have changed a lot. Just take my block, and in case if you don't know it, it's the north side of Lincoln Highway between 3rd and 4th Street by the tracks. Quite honestly, there's two tenants there now. There's Royer Brown on the corner because he bought the next building, and there's our properties. Well, if you look at that, and then you factor in the buildings that are maybe empty right now looking for tenants, but in code, or if you're looking at the lots that have become alleyways to the back, we're going to have a very spotty snow removal program. And you guys have to be very careful about this, because you can't puddle jump in the middle of winter when you're trying to redevelop a downtown area for who's shoveling their snow and who isn't shoveling their own snow. I have great concerns about that. Now, I'll raise my hand and tell you, I'll shovel our own snow, but there's a whole lot of building to the east of us, my brother and I, and there's one building to the west of us, between the other buildings on the corner, that really have no one there. So how are you going to manage that and require the proper snow removal, I guess, is yet to be determined. Now, with all that being said, to me, this all ties hand to the word Blythe, or the economic development of downtown. You've heard me talk before, but I have taken the time now over the past month to ask a lot of questions and talk to as many people as I possibly could talk to about this TIF stuff. Because I'll be honest with you, when I started getting involved, I was completely ignorant to a lot of what was going on. So I made a few notes. The word that's coming up all the time is transparency to the public. Well, the public has the right to know, and shame on all of us, or any of us, if that wasn't exposed and brought to their attention. I've also heard the taxing district concerns about the spending. Well, if this has been going on for 10 years-ish, shame on them for not bringing it to your attention sooner, because that seems to be one of the holdbacks on working through the next level of this TIF program. I've listened to, and you've all listened to, public's positive and public's negative concerns. There is no town or city anywhere in our country that doesn't have a nucleus of a downtown, because that's how the towns grew and developed. So no one can take that lightly for the importance of developing a downtown, whether you're John Q. Public or John Q. owner of the business or the real estate. The momentum that I've witnessed over the last several months seems to be stalling and slowing down. Personally, I'm concerned about that delay of time, because delay is odorous to the development of this program, because and I'll say this forever, the glass is half empty for me, but it is the future that we need to focus on to work through, whether it be the vacant buildings, whether it be the vacant building regulations, whether it be the snow removal, and or the approval of the next TIF program. Even Bessie said something that I was very impressed with, because John had spoke about a month ago. This program works when you work with the program. If you don't work with the program, you're going to have some unhappy people in the taxing districts, or you're going to have some unhappy people in the public. But it's significantly important. And I asked the mayor if I could talk. He said it's open to everyone. So I'm going to continue to say my piece. What I feel on my heart is the best thing for us to do, not only for me and my family, because of course I take care about them, but what's best for our community. So please think about all these things as you march forward. And I'll end with this. I will be available for anyone in the public or on council to visit my properties or visit with me or talk to me about any issue. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Glenn. I think there were a couple of questions within that presentation. Thaddeus, perhaps you can address those, and then we'll open it up to any questions or comments from council.
Sure. So specifically to how we define a building as vacant, that's partially why I'm here. I seek the council's input on that and guidance on that. Just some thoughts in discussion that had come up during research periods with this. Obviously, if we have properties that don't have issues or violations and they're actively for sale or for a lease, the intent isn't to penalize them and try to beat those property owners down. At least that's not my intent. I don't think that's going to drive any investment into DeKalb. I think if we've got, similar to our crime-free program, where if you don't have violations at the property, then we can take a light hand with that and certainly work with people and not have a cost associated with it. We could go so far as to just say, if it's vacant within this amount of time, no matter if it's for sale or lease, that we can tack on a registration fee with that. I think what would help is if we've got properties that are being maintained and we don't have any issues at them, then we don't require that registration. If we have an issue come up, say somebody doesn't plow their or shovel their sidewalk, then we could give them a warning, and if it doesn't become a problem again, it's lesson learned and we're done. If we continue to have problems at that point, then I would say maybe we need to step it into, now we're at a point of registration. There's a fee because the city is going to incur some real cost to have to abate that, to mow lawns, to even to fund a demolition program for some of the worst properties. But that's simply my 2 cents on it, not by any means an agenda item I'm pushing. I'm just looking again for council input on this.
We all saw quite a bit of the background material, and I know, Mike, you and I were sort of at the forefront of having this brought back to discussion, if only as new business for discussion only. But I appreciate that. I appreciate your comments, Glenn. Mike Verbeek, Alderman Verbeek.
Yes, Thaddeus, and that's a very fair approach. I'm certainly open to a discussion of what is that term of vacancy. Is 1 year appropriate? I know through the examples that we shared that it's kind of all over the place. So I think trying to help Thaddeus make a decision and council make a decision, do we believe that 1 year is a fair time frame for these to be recognized?
Alderman Fagan.
And to take that a little farther, though, you have to consider what percentage of the building is occupied to be considered vacant.
Right.
I believe I put that in the memo as well.
Yeah.
I don't, certainly if we've got a strip mall that they've got one tenant in, whether it's new construction, for example, when Pizza Hut gets going, if they've got Pizza Hut in and the other 2 tenant spaces are not occupied, I don't think we're wise to try to penalize them for not having 2 spaces occupied. Similarly, if somebody's just down to a single tenant space, but that tenant's still maintaining their space and the owner is maintaining the property, I don't believe that would be a wise use of staff resources as long as the property is maintained and it still has partial occupancy.
Alderman Fanouken.
Thaddeus or Alderman Verbeek. I'd be interested to hear your comments on, for the public's edification, what do we gain by having a registry of vacant buildings?
So if we're going to coin the phrase vacant to include both foreclosure properties as well as vacant properties, certainly now with our commercial building inspection program, we have those buildings that qualify, contact information, and owners that are associated with that. For some of the foreclosure properties, if we don't have that information, it certainly is a burden on staff to try to understand who owns that and make contact with them. There was a townhouse that had a smoke detector going off and had a complaint on that and tried to track down, I personally tried to track down who the owner was at that time, didn't have any contact information. Did some research to find out who had the foreclosure filing, spent 20 minutes on the phone with a lender, and after much input and information, they ultimately said, we don't know who owns that property, but it's not us. So thankfully the fire chief was able to make entry and get that taken care of so the neighbors don't have that issue. But as of late, I've had other properties where it's simply an owner has gone past their ability to care for the property and will no longer be there, and they don't really have a trust or mechanism set up to take care of that. So really what I'd like to see is if we have people that know they can't take care of a property or a bank that's foreclosing on a property, to take the action and steps necessary to be a responsible property owner, which I think back to my original statement, we're looking for responsive property owners who will maintain the property, pick up the phone when we call them, do the things that we need to so the community doesn't feel the effects of blight.
Mike, is that what you were looking for?
Spot on. Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Alderman Jacobson.
Again, if it was going to be done, it's got to be tailored correctly. As we've talked at the last meeting, things have a tendency to morph as they get rolled out in the city, and we have limited resources. Again, you're talking about an issue that really, when I've gone to IML and they do sessions on abandoned houses, ghost houses, there's communities down south, when you look down at the southern Illinois border, that 20 or 30% of their property stock is abandoned. People and banks have just walked away from, and they're dealing with that blighting influence. Again, ours generally are either foreclosures or the inability to rent or sell, and they haven't been a major drain on resources or issue of problem, especially now that the foreclosures have gone down significantly over the last few years as the mortgages have reset. again, absent of a demonstrated real need, to believe that the banks are going to, by their own volition, going through a very messy foreclosure process that could be multiple lenders and multiple escrowees and multiple people that they've assigned that note and those things to believe they're going to call up and say, hey, we own a property we're foreclosing. It's probably going to be rather rare in the reality. So then the question becomes, how do we enforce it, and what kind of burden does it take? Again, hearing one phone call to one bank after an hour of work by a staff person resulted in nothing, no answer. That's how most of those calls do. Again, knowing how that market works and trying to get information on them, it can be next to impossible in some cases. Again, I don't see where the cost benefit is, knowing that we have limited resources, knowing that there haven't been a whole lot of high profile major issues in these properties, knowing we have a very limited property stock of abandoned homes that people have just walked away from, which eventually get rectified through tax sale in a 2 to 3 year period. I guess my question would be, why? Is it demonstrated that this is something we need? It's yet another license or fee or cost, but that also means it's another resource or drain on our existing resources that we've demonstrated we're having problems fulfilling the existing inspection programs.
Mike, do the options, and the options here are really, to me, pretty simple as I look through the background material. Either we partner with a vendor or we decide to do it ourselves. And I don't know if the latter one, the city is in a position to do that right now, as Alderman Jacobson alluded to. Do you have any thoughts on this, Mike? I think you perhaps, more than anybody else on the council, has been the most active in asking for some of this information.
And certainly we've met further about this issue, and a vendor support-based model would be most effective. Thaddeus, whether you can speak, or the gentleman here from ProChamps to talk about the cost neutrality of that program and how the city would greatly benefit from that type of a cost-neutral effort.
Certainly. So we have Stan Urban from ProChamps, who is one of the vendors that is listed in the packet that you received. He is available if you have questions or would like him to give a brief presentation on that.
I'd like to hear if you can keep it short, relatively short. What I liked about ProChamps is that it's the third-party vendor, but you seem to have a real diverse clientele base in terms of at least my perception of these communities.
Mayor, Council, thank you for this opportunity. My background, 15 years of sitting in a big seat, better known as the village manager.
City of what?
Village manager in 3 different communities.
Okay.
And I also sat in one of those chairs for 8 years also.
Mm-hmm.
So I've sat on both sides of the bench. And a headache in the town that always ends up on the manager's desk, or the mayor's desk, or an alderman's desk. How come my neighbor didn't cut the grass? The most important thing a manager's got to deal with. Forget the deficit spending. Don't worry about that. Briefly, I was approached while I was at an ICMA conference, International City Managers Association. They said, your town's got 540 foreclosures. I said, I know we got a lot. Punched in a few numbers, showed me some things. I said, okay, so what's it going to cost me to get this information? Nothing. I said, but other than just a blip on a screen that says it's somewhere on Lover's Lane, what else do I get? Punch some more numbers in. It gave me the mortgagee's name, address, phone numbers, email addresses, and who filed the foreclosure. It also gave me the property management company's name, address, phone numbers, and emails. It gave me the asset manager's name, address, phone numbers, and emails. I said, okay, what is it going to cost me? Nothing. I went back to the room, had a couple drinks, next day go back there. What's the catch? Oh, there is a catch. We're going to pay you. I'm like, oh, well, I got to go drink some more. I come back the third day. What is the catch? You need to pass an ordinance, and there's 3 different types of ordinances. One, anyone that files a foreclosure must register. That's one ordinance. You can combine an ordinance and say anyone that files a foreclosure and has a vacant property must register. Third ordinance, if you have rental properties, you must register. My personal recommendation to this council and every council that I've spoke to, forget the vacancies. We don't know about vacancies. There is no big pile in the sky that we can research to find out where the vacancies are in your town. I'm being brutally honest. If you did pass that ordinance and partner with us, we'll be happy to work with you, but we will be working with your utility building department. That's who knows where the vacancies are. When they send out a water bill and it comes back, 9 times out of 10 it's vacant. Foreclosures, no community has the staff to sit at a computer all day long looking at DeKalb County Courthouse every hour on the hour to see which lawyer filed the foreclosure. Nope, Aurora doesn't have it. Rockford doesn't have it. City of Chicago doesn't have that many staff. We have over 100 people in Melbourne, Florida, sitting at computers all day long looking at the court records. When they file, it'll say, Chase Bank filed against Mr. and Mrs. John Doe. It just says Chase Bank, and that's what Mr. Mack had that problem. Who is Chase Bank? Chase Bank of Lombard, Chase Bank of DeKalb, Chase Bank of where? Our firm does the research. Mr. Mack, unfortunately, I just gave him copies of it today, which I don't know if he was able to get them to you in time, that will show you that Chase Bank of Lombard handled the foreclosure. Mr. Jones handled the foreclosure. Mr. Jones' email is this. Mr. Jones' cell number is this. That information is all web-based, which all the IT guys love because it doesn't fill up your server. The cost, again, is nothing for the information. The registration fee for foreclosures, we recommend to be at $300 twice a year. My question back when I was there was, why twice a year? Why not do $600 once a year? Because today Fannie Mae owns that property. 3 weeks from now, Chase Bank owns that property. 6 months from now, Bank of America owns that property. They are flying these properties all over. The last town that I worked in, when we put this into place, I inherited 4 properties within the first 6 months because the banks didn't even know they owned the property in that town. Why am I pushing foreclosures? Because ultimately they become vacancies. Why wait until it's vacant to deal with it? Nip it in the bud.
What's your name, sir?
Stan Urban, U-R-B-A-N.
Okay. And you're with Pro Champs?
Yes, as of January.
Yeah. What I'd like to do, Stan, is to, and I appreciate your comments. They've been very, very helpful. You've given us a number of references. Prospect Heights.
There's a few more. Last week we were in Central Illinois.
Yeah, right. And what I'd like staff to do is to spend a little bit of time to talk to a few of these folks, and then I think we could move forward whether or not we want to get a further proposal, if you will, regarding you as a third-party vendor. Does that make sense?
More sense, and the next time, if I'm allowed it, I'd be happy to come and show you folks, living life color, what the data would be that you would have access to.
Good.
Keep in mind, again, you already have a vacant property ordinance in place. I don't think we need to rewrite the script. Let's start with foreclosures only, and then work towards vacancy with foreclosures.
Okay.
Thank you for your
Stan.
time.
I appreciate it. Thaddeus, thank you for doing the research on this. Do you have any closing comments, or are there any other comments? If not, thank you very much.
One question I would have.
Yeah, sure.
My apologies. Defining a term vacant, I guess, would be my understanding. I need to talk to these communities, but want to understand what the will of the council is as far as getting that term a little bit better nailed down as far as duration and what type of properties we'd be looking at if it's vacant and foreclosures, strictly foreclosures. Give me some direction, turn me loose. I'd be happy to do it.
I would support the foreclosure initiative to start with and see where that takes us. Results.
See that where that takes us.
Yeah.
Pretty good consensus on that? Okay, good. Thank you. Does that give you enough information and enough direction?
And do we want to do it immediately at the filing of the foreclosure or after it's sat for a little bit of time, understanding there may be some that person gets behind on their payment and they correct it after a couple months?
What I'd like you to do is work with Stan, perhaps ask him that question, see what
Certainly.
makes more sense.
All right, we'll do.
Okay.
Thank you
Very
so
good.
much.
Great.
Very good. Thank you.
you.
Thanks. Alderman Jacobson.
Again, if we're talking about a cost-neutral program that's taking aim at foreclosures to make sure those don't proliferate into a bigger problem, I don't think anybody has a problem with that. Again,
Right,
if that's the goal of this, I think that would be a wonderful program. I know there's companies out there doing those things. I know we've seen them at IML and the vendors. There's several out there. If that's the plan, again, I think we don't have to go into the weeds of defining those things. You turn it over to the company, you let them sniff out the information. Again, even a pre-foreclosure where someone's fallen behind, you want to know who the mortgagee is and those things. In the eventuality it becomes a problem. When you reach out to them, they say, no, it's still an occupied home. We're working through a modification. Those things, again, they can give you that information, and we don't have the resources to find that stuff out. So if it doesn't cost us anything, I think it can be a tool in our arsenal of being proactive in terms of how we're dealing with some of these things. But
Absolutely.
if that's the goal, I'm all for that.
Yeah, appreciate it. Any other comments? Okay, there are no other items on our agenda tonight. I'd like to move to communications. Alderman Jacobson.
None tonight. None tonight.
Okay, Alderman Fanouken?
Just to remind people that a week from Thursday is Halloween, so that night in particular, watch out for kids running around in costumes and be extra alert that night. Thank you.
Alderman Marquardt?
No report.
Alderman Fagan?
No report.
Alderman Noriko?
I just want to thank the mayor for his kind comments about the Women of Achievement Award, and also give a shout out to my sister who surprised me by coming from Tallahassee for the event. And so it's exciting. I'm glad that they survived the hurricane. Barely, but they survived.
I saw this lady walk in during the committee of the whole meeting, and I had not seen her before. And, you know, let's face it, there are a few faces in the audience that we do see more frequently than others. And I couldn't believe that she walked in unbeknownst to Kate, her sister. And I wish I would have focused on your face when you looked out there and said, is Stacy, right? Chris is, wow, that is something. So, great to have you. Up from Tallahassee, Florida. Okay, Alderman Verbeek.
No report.
And Alderman Favor.
No report.
I have no report tonight. City Clerk Lynn Fazekas.
Would just like to announce that my office has changed. I'm now in room 213, still on the second floor here, but I have great access from the elevator and the stairs now, and really good signage.
Great. Thank you, Lynn. City Attorney Dean Frieders.
Thank you, Mayor. Just wanted to update the council. Our administrative hearing process has been fully implemented and is going well. Today we had over 70 cases on the call. We had upwards of 10 hearings that were conducted. We are using the electronic administrative hearing software that the council authorized and working through all of the processes and procedures associated with that conversion. It's functioning very effectively so far, and we have nothing but good news to report.
Thank you, Dean. Interim City Manager Molly Talkington.
Thank you, Mayor. As a reminder, the Finance Advisory Committee is on Wednesday, so they'll be reviewing what the council direction was from your last budget workshop, and I will send you the updated PowerPoint where I've added your feedback from that meeting, so you have it to remember where we were on everything. Thank you.
Sure. Police Chief Gene Lowry.
No report.
Eric Hicks, our Fire Chief.
No report.
Joellen Charlton.
Just real briefly, I know some of you follow the pending agenda item list that we put together for the council, and we had originally scheduled to have a discussion of the sign code update on this agenda. Because of some other priorities and projects that we're working on, we pushed that. We need to finish up and focus on some of the things we have going right now, but my expectation is to bring that to council the first meeting in January.
Very good. Thank you, Joellen. Tim Holdeman, our Public Works Director.
I wanted to let the residents know that Illinois 23 and Illinois 38, the intersection there, will be closed beginning this Friday, October 26th, for up to 4 days for the Union Pacific Railroad repairing the crossing. Also, would like to let residents know that next Monday, on the 29th, we will start our loose leaf collection schedule for November. We'll be working from north to south. We'll do about 4 cycles, so about once per week, and remind residents to please put your leaves behind the curb on the parkway, not in the street, so that the leaves don't clog the drains. Also want to let people know that the Pride Awards, people responsible for improving DeKalb's environment, nominations for these awards are open now and will remain open until November 9th. More information on our website.
Thank you, Tim. Our IT Director, Mark Thorson.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple quick things. We're on the tail end of National Cybersecurity Awareness Month. It's from October 1st to October 30th. The city does have information up on our website. You can either go under the Information Technology Department page or search on the keyword cyber, C-Y-B-E-R, for more information. There's some good tips and links to national sites that offer up some helpful tips on how to be safe online. Also, as you may have noticed, Channel 14 was out. It went out Thursday afternoon, and we were able to troubleshoot where the problem was. We had a device that failed. We replaced it as of this afternoon, so Channel 14 is back up and running. And one last thing is tomorrow is the first of several website refresh public forums. The first one is tomorrow evening at 6:30 p.m. here in the council chambers. The following one will be a week from today at 10 a.m. here at the City Hall, and then we have subsequent ones following that at different locations. So we're trying to spread out across the community at different days and times to try and be as accessible as possible. We encourage as many people as possible to attend and provide as much information as you can. We also have a survey on the website. There's a banner page on the main page for website refresh. There's also a link to a survey. We're also asking for information for those who might not be able to attend. So,
well, as we know, no matter what we do with our website, we can't keep everybody happy. I applaud you for scheduling those 3 hearings. What I'd like to suggest, Mark, is that once we get that information and once you can glean that and wean that down, I'd like to have you consider making a presentation here to the City Council so that we can present those facts, figures, recommendations, whatever, to the public.
Absolutely.
Very good. Thank you. There being no further business, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Alderman Fagan, seconded by Alderman Favor. Excuse me. It's been moved by Alderman Verbeek, seconded by Alderman Favor, that we adjourn tonight's meeting. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. We are adjourned.
There's